Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So there's a crazy idea floating around out there on the internet about sending BTS Jin and perhaps other BTS members when they enlist in the army to a remote little island in Korea that does have cultural significance and national identity significance, but it's still a crazy idea and seems to show that there are impulses to continuously use BTS for every single political project that people can get away with. And of course, the mask sale continues on the EcoFace LED masks. We're down to our remaining silver color in the Platinum Edition, but the gold and the white standard edition are still available. And not only that, I got a new product for you guys in terms of we can create a bundle deal. I'll figure out how to do it on the website. But this, you guys, is from the same makers of EcoFace. But this focuses on your eye area. If you have always wanted to do LED treatment for just like crow's feet and under your eye, take a look at this. It's so cool. I'll go over it in detail at the end of the video, but this seriously does a 15-minute treatment. You can use it as a power nap. She talks to you in Korean if you want to practice your Korean, and it even warms up so that you can get increased blood circulation in your eyes. So all that and more coming up, so stay tuned. So if you have been following Korea, you may have seen a very strange flyer every now and then with big old words saying, "Do you know Tokto? Do you know Tokto?" Like straight in your face, and then people get really flustered and all angry when talking about it. So it's hard to understand why Korean people are so sensitive about this issue. Well, if you don't know Tokto, I guess now is time to know, and I'll help you through it in a more easy to understand manner. So Tokto is the most eastern territory of South Korea. Now these are little, you can't even call them islands, so they call them islets. And essentially there are rock formations that you can go on, but normal people are only allowed to visit during the day. I don't think there's really any people who live on there. It might be one little couple. It's either on Tokto or on Ulleungdo, which is like I think about an hour boat ride away. So it's not even that close, but that's the closest, pairing of these two islands. But the most eastern part is Tokto, and it's not a tourist attraction unless you want to go there for like national pride and look at it. There's no resorts, there's no restaurants. I don't even know if they have well, I think they have like one little bathroom and one area. And the reason why it is, let's say, we're not talking about like, why are people so upset about any claims of sovereignty? Basically Japanese trying to, say that it's theirs, but they're not really saying it like the normal person on the street in Japan won't be like, "Oh yeah, I care about Tokto." It's more used by the conservative right in Japan, and it's such an easy way for them to attack Koreans and get them all flustered. Now, why is Tokto in this modern age extremely important? And I would say that its role has gotten more important in our modern age, even though there really is nothing on that island, than it was way back hundreds of years ago, before a lot of ocean type of either fishing or warships when navies started to develop. The reason why it's even more important now in this modern age is that it sets the territorial line. If you look at Korea, it's a peninsula, right? So if its border was right at our peninsula, and then, every nation has like an extended naval zone that they have, that basically extends their territory, and they can control whether you can even fly over it or not. It extends the territory out in the ocean. If it was just the peninsula, you can see how vulnerable that makes Korea. Now, having Tokto extends the area of exclusivity to Korea. So economically, that means like we can fish there, and fishing is extremely important. And even now, we always have like these clashes, like Chinese and North Korean fishermen trying to, sneak their way into South Korean waters, grab the fish, and then, go back over the border, at nighttime so that they can get our fish. Not only that, on a strategic military level, like I said, you can restrict air zone access based on your borders, which include the ocean. So having Tokto is critical for South Korean national security. Also, not only are fish down there, but apparently, around Tokto, and whether it's been exploited or not, they've been really quiet about this, but apparently there are a lot of riches down there, like way down in the ocean for mining or any type of other, even sometimes, when they say like, oh, we get our seawater for our like cosmetic ingredients, like 3 miles down into the water, something, something crazy like where the ocean is pristine, something like that. So basically there are territorial issues, national security issues, and then also economic issues tied with having this islet as part of South Korea. Now, the thing is that South Korea has been very sensitive about this, and I know that being part of a South Korean media machine for a while, I always thought that we talked about it in a very self-destructive manner. The way that people talk about it in South Korea really seems to actually weaken its position when really there is no weak position whatsoever. So if you're going to ask me on the whole Dokdo debate, there is no debate. It is Korea's islets or islands, however you want to call it. It belongs to Korea. So there is really no debate on that. The reason that it comes up in debates is that every now and then, officially there's paperwork or sometimes a government stances by Japan that keeps saying that, oh, they have claim to it. Now, it has been in the modern history since the 50s controlled by South Korea, and I don't like this term that they use, effectively controlled. That's again makes it sound like, is there a debate? Oh, maybe it really, maybe it is Japan's. And so I don't like it when South Koreans themselves use language that makes their position less strong. So then that was a compromise by the US government at the time, mediating this conflict. Now, the reason why it gets a little bit tricky in the sense is that Tokto wasn't the original name. Apparently, like historically, like, it's had different names, like properties and streets, even, in the United States, they don't have the same name for centuries. And the United States not even, been that long for, more than 3 centuries. And so the way that this island was considered or named, the Ulleungdo, the one that's closer to it, that's bigger, that was the one that, they bothered, like, in the days of kings and queens to really specifically name, because they kind of didn't care about the other one. The other one you could barely land a ship on. And so that was always kind of included in Korea. Sometimes it said like, Ulleungdo, which even wasn't the original name either, and that other island. Or there are maps that show Ulleungdo and then also Tokto as well as part of the maps. Now, I think what Japan has been doing is taking that liberty and saying like, no, like that was something that, we considered ours. But there have been documents going back hundreds of years, and just in modern ancient history, if you can call it that, like 1600s, 1700s, there have already been documentations saying that this is Korean territory. So the 1696 Murakami document shows that there was a Korean official who testified that the administrator over in Japan said that, oh no, this is not our territory. And the reason why he spoke up in 1696 was back in 1692, the fishermen, the Japanese fishermen, the Korean fishermen were fighting over like who can fish there. And so the Japanese government at that time conceded and said like, okay guys, Japanese fishermen, stop it. This is Korea's. Then 100 years later, 1785, there was a Japanese scholar who created a map, and this map also showed that the islets were Korean territory. There was nothing that, like if you own something, you don't need to make a statement about it. It's usually when the other person needs to back down and they're like, okay, sorry, this is yours. And so this map also showed that from Japan, this is not like Korean people. This is from Japan showing that the islets are Korean. Now we got 1696, 1785, and then in 1877, again, a Japanese government agency, the Japanese National Land Registry, said that, okay, you got to take out this, islets. Now, the debate, though, is that were they referring to, this is what happens when you're, I guess, writing documents like with brush and ink and it gets like, deteriorated or something, or when people are too lazy to, maybe it wasn't laziness, because it seems like, kind of tough to like, go out into the ocean with like a sailboat or something and then try to see like, okay, like which rocks. But the Japanese side that is very conservative or like ultra right wing are saying like, oh, we weren't talking about Tokto when we were, doing these things. We were talking about the island right next to it, Ulleungdo. And so there's a debate over which islands they were talking about. But in this National Land Registry, they said in Japan, they said that, okay, we stop like, saying that Dokdo is ours. And at that point, even today, Japan refers to it as Takeshima. And so they're saying that, oh, well, back then, like, 200 years ago, when we were saying Takeshima, we didn't mean Tokto. We meant the other bigger one next to it. So we were never talking about Tokto. So, and then what they tried to do in 1905, Japan, when they invaded South Korea, eventually turned it into a colony. They said like, oh, nobody's claiming that island over there. It's an unclaimed island. So now we claim it. So that's what they're trying to do with like rewriting the history. Like, oh, 1905, well, we found some rocks and nobody's claimed it. Although we've had documentation well before 1905 that came from Japan itself acknowledging Tokto's belonging to Korea. Officially right now, even Tokto, it belongs to Gangwon province, the east coast of Korea where they have all the cool surf beaches and stuff. So that province administers Tokto, or it's part of that in terms of like, where do you put the address? There's Gangwon province. And then on Tokto right now, there are people guarding it from the military, but they're not conscripts, and also the police agency. So back in 2018, they combined like police and military and really professionalized it. And now there's no way for any kind of mandatory military conscript who is serving their military duty as part of the police to be thrown out into Tokto, because it's only for like the real professionals. So sometimes in Seoul, you'll see these like young kids who are dressed up in police uniforms and they're guarding like a lot of the street protests and things like that. A lot of those guys are actually performing their mandatory military service, and which is why they just look like kids, because they are little kids. So we were talking about modern old history or ancient history from 1696, but King Sejong the Great, who brought so much advancement to Korea with inventions and also the invention of the written language of Hangul, under his reign, they also, and that was way before 1696, and so they also had some declarations saying that Tokto was Korean. So from even then, that we have records for, it was Korea's. And then somehow along the lines between then and then the late 19th century, the French got involved, and they're just like, ooh, look at these rocks. We're going to call them the Liancourt rocks. I don't know why French people need to get in this mess, but yeah, you guys can take a step out. But if you guys are confused, like, what is going on? Why these rocks have like so many different names? So the sometimes even now in this modern age, when people don't want to take a side with, either Japan or Korea, they'll refer it to by that old outdated French name, the Liancourt rocks. So of course, Korea is always going to say it's Tokto, and then the ultra right wing in Japan will call it Takashima. Now let's speed up to the middle of the 20th century. So in 1952, that's when, in terms of when the US got involved, from Korean War, 1950, 1953, and when the US was involved in, I would say, like, giving its blessing, it's said that, okay, according to the US, Korea controls it. So that was 1952. And then in 1954, Japan wasn't giving up. They want, again, like I'm saying, in the modern era, they're beginning to realize actually having that naval territory is a lot more advantageous. So it seems as if between 1954 and 1962, Japan was getting a little bit sneaky. They're like, okay, well, let's take this to the International Court of Justice. And, that's kind of like a UN, but for like legal disputes. And Korea was like, we're not taking it there because we know it's going to be rigged against our favor. Because if you look at the power, the international power at the time between Japan and South Korea, obviously South Korea, they would probably be really manipulated out of the property. So it's as if, somebody like trying to steal your house or something. And Korea said like, no, we're not going there. And so again, I think that also in the way that if you don't understand like, power games with, even different countries in a place where it's supposed to be about justice and law, it looks bad for Korea because it's like, well, if you don't have anything to hide, then why not go? But, you can get manipulated out of it. And then again, Japan tried in 2012, and Korea was like, no, we're not playing that game because we know, where you're going. I would say now that was 10 years ago in 2022. Instead of trying to throw BTS Jin there to make your point, because that also makes you look desperate too. It also makes it look like, well, why are they trying so hard, over these rocks about like, trying to prove that they own it when, it is South Korean. So like the South Korean military is there, South Korean police are there. There's no reason for, anybody to doubt it. It's just that Korean people get more like up in arms about it. That makes them look more guilty, I think, instead of just being calm and putting the resources to then eventually put it to bed in a way where you get the documentation that you need from the international community, whether that is through the International Court of Justice or not. Maybe it could be some other entity that is more fair towards Korea. Because this always struck me as a little bit odd where, you have your house and then you have your car parked out in front and it's your car, it's been your car forever, and then your neighbor saying like, that's my car. But they're just like trying to say, like throw it out there and see like, who will believe them. Be like, oh yeah, that is my car. But everybody sees, well, who's driving it? Korea. Yeah, well, who has the registration? Korea. Like, who pays for the gas? Korea. Who pays for the insurance? Korea. And then Korean people are like, oh, this is my disputed car. This is the car that is under dispute over who owns it. And people are just like, but if it's your car, why do you keep saying it's disputed? And then it gives, I think, more ammunition to the ultra right wing in Japan to then be like, oh, well, okay, well, if they're so like not confident about it, then maybe we can keep trying to make these lobs every now and then. It doesn't cost them anything to basically be like, okay, well, they in some sort of like white paper every year, they just kind of tack it on there. And so right now, I don't think a good way to fix it is to send BTS off to this remote island like it's the Squid Games, because I did say that the Japanese ultra-right uses this as a political weapon, but, fair is fair. Tokto is also a very convenient scapegoat, or just kind of like, you're just like, if you're like a parent didn't cook dinner, be like, oh, well, I found a bag of potato chips. Like, whenever you got nothing to serve for dinner to your political constituents, you can always pull out Tokto and be like, look, if you're a politician, you have nothing else to talk about, you can go on and on about Tokto. And that, I think, also has hampered Korea's willingness to go 100% of the way. I think it's just like it's like the project is like 95% done, but just to get it all done, then you lose an insurance policy when it comes to like, you need to rally people in the country or distract them from something, and if you don't have Tokto as your standby that you know how to use real well to distract the Korean public, then that's the loss of a political asset. And I think that has actually been a very, very wrong thing to do for the Korean public, because you get them all stirred up and you get them all like you use this important issue for your own political end. Now, it would only work. Now, here's another criticism of Korean civil society. It only works because people do get worked up over it. And after kind of like thinking about it more and more, because rationally it makes sense. What you don't want to give that territory up to any other country, especially if it's been yours. Like I said, it creates a more safe buffer zone in terms of our territory. But what I think it is in terms of that emotional rage is, I think it is unreleased trauma or undealt with trauma going way back to the colonial era that Korean people have not dealt with. And Tokto itself can become a physical manifestation of a symbol of how much Japan has tried and did take away from Korea. And instead of healing mentally, because like I said, in previous videos, Korean people do not want to seek mental health treatment because it can be used against you even by other Koreans, basically be like, if you go into custody battle and you've gotten therapy, the spouse can be like, oh, they crazy because they went to therapy and there's a record. And people would get locked up in psychiatric hospitals before. So there's been kind of this negative perception of getting mental health treatment. But I think that really does start to express itself in strange ways, when you're talking about things like Tokto, because there have been so many people traumatized and the generational trauma gets passed down that never was dealt with in a healthy clinical manner. And so Tokto becomes like this physical manifestation, I think emotionally, for the hearts of a lot of Korean people in terms of this unforgiven rage against Japan. Now, another reason why I think this is a very dangerous road to cross in terms of throwing a pop star there to try to be like Tokto is ours, is that actually that misdirects the focus of national security, because it treats Japan as an enemy. And when the real reason for this mandatory military conscription is North Korea, that becomes a distraction and a veering off of goals. Yes, it should be protected, but it's already protected by professionals, professional military people, professional police forces. Why are you going to throw a pop star there to protect something so important? And so the thing is that the US, Japan, South Korea security alliance was created in terms of buffering against North Korea, and then, by proxy actually, or if you really want to, peek behind the curtains, China. But this security alliance has Japan in it. South Korea is supposed to be aligned with Japan as a force in the region to counter any threats. To then throw BTS Jin over there and kind of then point the anger at Japan is totally missing the point, because the security is supposed to be against our neighbors up in the north, in North Korea. So this again is turning into a major weird catastrophe by the politicians. Now, is it actually a real policy initiative? Well, the official reports were that it was netizens commenting a year or two ago saying oh, wouldn't it be a good idea if BTS went over to Tokto? And then some politicians at the time were like, oh, I think that might be a good idea to look at because it can bring international attention to the Tokto issue and help really solidify our claim on the islets. But again, that just makes it look like you have something to claim. No, the car is registered in your name, honey. You don't have to keep saying my neighbors keep saying that my car is theirs. I'm afraid that they're gonna drive off with it. Well, who has the keys? I do. Well, do you keep it yes. What are you doing? Unless you are using this as a tool politically to give your political base something when you have nothing else to feed them. So then the politicians said oh, it might be a good idea. And then the news media ran with it. And then especially with the announcement recently by WIBE saying that BTS is willing to go into the military, that issue resurfaced. Now, the reason why I think that's a little bit shady is that netizens in Korea talk about all sorts of things. So why this? Why this issue, and why was this given some sort of light of day? Now, this is just, surmising, but there has been a huge history in Korea of people from Korea's intelligence agencies aligned with a political party or another going out into the interwebs and making posts. I mean, President Park Geun-hye was also accused of utilizing our version of the CIA to help her get elected by, saying, putting on social media at the time, oh, I like her so much. Oh, she's such a great person. Well, those kind of things. Or it can be even weaponized for more policy stances. So it could be, in a sense, that the government is testing out this idea with the public. How would the public feel if one of the BTS members or all of them eventually went over to Dokdo? And so it could be one of those things, because I'm surprised it reached this level of national debate, where if it's supposedly just some netizens leaving comments somewhere and they don't even say where it was. So that's why it's a little bit fishy, where it might be the intelligence agencies coordinating, with some political party to try to see oh, well, is this a good idea that the Korean public would buy? And I think right now, even the Korean public is saying that'll look desperate. It again, it's trying to say that something is yours when you already know it's yours. So why are you trying to feed the ultra-right wingers in Japan some more to fight against you with? That's so counterproductive. And then especially when we're supposed to be in a tripartite security alliance here. So why are we trying to, make all of that fractured? What people who are really, really passionate about this issue and wanting to do something about it should do is actually Just do it based on diplomacy and the paperwork. File the paperwork in more places that's going to certify the claim. It doesn't have to get more complicated than that. Or the default, as it has been, is just like to do nothing and just ignore your crazy neighbor who keeps saying that your car is theirs. So again, putting BTS Jin in that car makes it look very, very, very desperate, and then makes other people who are not as versed on this subject start to wonder, like, well, maybe that car isn't his. And then that's just so counterproductive. And where are we at? We're gonna be back, hundreds of years ago. Come on. Like, do we want to have this issue continue and just dump it onto the next generation? Aren't you tired? So, yeah. If you didn't know Tokto, now I hope you know Tokto. Alright guys, so like I said, the mass sale continues. The special Seoulite TV only coupon code for $60 off is Seoulite TV. Now, what you can also use the coupon code on, and also in a lower priced bundle for the mask and this eye LED mask, like for your eyes. It's called the B1 and it's by WIBE, which is the parent company for EcoFace. This is, I think, one of their most amazing inventions because this is so cool. It feels like you're in the future. Oh, yeah. She talked to you. Watch. And right now it only comes in Korean. So if you want to practice your Korean, you can get this mask. And so she said, please select the mode. It comes in 3 modes. This is not an eye massager. So, don't look for like movement in the eye, but it does have heating and LED red lights. Oh, if you don't select them, she don't gives you a time limit. If you don't select the mode in a certain time, she's like, I'm done. We're shutting it down, honey. So she just said we shut down. So I have to press it again. But I want to show it to you first. So here are the heating elements for your eye. And it warms up to a maximum of 39 degrees Celsius. So above 42 degrees Celsius, that's when it starts to not be good for your eyes. So the company limited it purposely to 39. And then you're also like, you're wondering, because I was wondering, I was like, well, what's going to happen? Where's the battery? So the battery's over here. So if anything happens, not that it is going to happen because this has been on the market for like 2 years, absolutely no problems. There's also a circuit breaker. So if anything happens, it shuts it off automatically. And she probably has some words to say if she's going to shut it down there too. But the things are here. And so what is in direct contact with your eyes is this heating element. But as you can see, it's on this rubber band. So it's not like right in direct contact with like a lot of mechanics. And so it's super comfortable. It automatically goes on for 15 minutes. So I found that this is an amazing power nap because she talks to you at the end to wake you up. So not that it's supposed to be that way, but she woke me up. So select the mode. Now I like to do both the heating and the red light. So that's the green. If you don't, green, so green screen. I don't know how that's going to affect it. So if you don't want the LED red light, then you can do just the heating, or you can do just the LED red light, no heating, or you can do both at the same time. Now the thing is that if you don't put it on at the right time, she talks to you saying like, please put it on, we got to get started. So it senses when you've put it on, and then you can see the red lights come on and they really go underneath your eye and especially the crow's feet area, and then the eye part heats up. I just want to keep doing this, but we got to continue this video. So she can tell if you took it off, and she says like, please put it back on properly. This is the second time she said that. She only gives you 2 warnings. If you don't do it, watch. She's gonna say, we're shutting this down, Yeah, she's like, we're done with the care. So you don't have to worry about it because like this auto off function is just so great. And I've seen like, in terms of like the full face mask, sometimes like people were wondering if I use the eye guard, oh, what about like, underneath the eyes and the crow's feet? You can use it without the eye guard. But if you want to use the eye guard and then work on your full face with the mask, that's great. And then if you just want to work on the eyes, or some days you just don't want to use the full mask, you can use this, especially if you want to take a power nap and then also work on anti-aging. It has the same LED depths as the other mask, so you're working on two areas, one for collagen production and the other for blood circulation, and so you just look more refreshed. And so it's a great combo to have. It's basically like having a dermatologist at your house whenever you want, and now she talks to you. All right, guys, well, let me know what you think. It's a little bit crazy, huh? It's like kind of like the BTS Squid Island, politicians just playing around, like it's like the elites playing around, seeing like, what will happen if you just throw people on the island. That's not fair. So leave your comments below, like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.